It's the final word daily wash-up after, was it a scintillating test match? It was one that was very, very intriguing at Edgbaston, which India won with a shellacking of England to draw, or bring at least the series level at 1-1 with 3 to play. I'm Daniel Norcross. I'm joined, as I am so very often and delightfully, by Ben Jones in this show that is brought to you by New Brew, the supplement to support brain health and performance. So, as always, I will ask Ben to sum something up in 30 seconds. And today, I'm going to ask him to sum up the state of this series in 30 seconds.
Well, a week ago, we were at Headingley, and England had performed a brilliant run chase, and it was going to be 5-0. Ben Stokes was going to be knighted by the end of the month, and all was well in the England camp. A week later, it's actually very different. It's going to be 4-1 to India. They're going to come soaring back. Shubman Gill is going to be given some position in the cabinet, and India are running away with it. It's been quite the turnaround, and England are suddenly looking at changes, questions about basketball, questions about their approach, about their manhood. And the momentum has somewhat reversed. So we are on tenterhooks as to what on earth is going to happen next.
We are, and with that in mind, we're going to look back at the test match in the round and give you a sneak preview of our sneak preview, which will take place on Wednesday, which is only a couple of days away before the Lord's Test, which is due to be drenched in sunshine. But what this series has been drenched in is runs, lots of lovely runs. India have scored thousands of them, the second highest number of runs scored in a test match against England. You know, the previous second highest was the timeless test at Durban in 1939. It took 11 days for South Africa to compile fewer runs than India managed by the end of the fourth day and set England a genuinely impossible run chase. But where I want to start is some of the things that were really freakish and weird in this test match. And the very first one was England playing for a draw. What did that look like to you? To me, it looked like my maiden aunt at a rave, not quite sure what she was doing. 1 minute, Jamie Smith is showing that he's got the best defensive technique in the entire team and should probably be batting at 3 and not keeping wicket. The next minute, he's hitting 2 sixes into the hollies and then holding out off the third with a clever piece of bowling, slower ball into the pitch, which he didn't quite spot. Was he playing for a draw? Was he trying to kill people in the holly stand? Was he trying to do both? Bryden Cars, refusing singles and then playing one-handed pull shots, one bounce again into the hollies. It seemed like the hollies was the thing they were really taking against. It was a curious way to try to draw a match. But Ben, was that because the pitch did that thing that everybody hoped that it wouldn't from an England point of view, and everybody who wants to bowl first and chase definitely doesn't want to have happen, but has happened for literally hundreds of years of cricket? It deteriorated. It did deteriorate, and batting got more difficult. And so how else do you play for a draw other than smash the ball into the hollies?
I'm going to slightly take issue with that. I don't think it did deteriorate that much. It was, there was a quote from Ben Stokes in one of the various post matches where he said that this actually ended up being more of a subcontinental pitch. Which I'll be honest, when I heard it, was like, I kind of get what you're saying, Ben, but that is fanning the flames of online discourse if you're complaining about the pitch and saying that it seems a bit Asian. I think obviously what he's saying is that it was flat, 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 and then someone flicked a switch and suddenly it was ragging. Which that's not what happened. It's not at all what
No.
happened. It did start to take more spin on day 5, as you would expect. That's just physics. But I think the bigger thing was that crack that opened up on a length that Akash Deep was honing in on with missile strength accuracy, and that's not to take it away from him. To be able to hit it from various points of releasing on the crease is still an incredibly impressive feat. I don't need to convince people that I love Akash Deep. I'm on record. But I think what to kind of come back to the baseball approach in a draw, what was peculiar wasn't that England were playing, that they were dead batting it, and it was, what's this polar bear doing in Arlington, Texas? It wasn't, oh, they're actually playing a shotter ball and they're trying to chase the runs. It was the fact that it was something slightly murky and in the middle. It didn't feel like they were trying to chase at all costs and going down in a blaze of glory. And it didn't feel like they were just intent on batting the 100 odd overs that they needed to in order to get the draw. And I think that to me is the more concerning thing. I like baseball. I love baseball in many ways, because of its commitment to the bit, because it exists at the extremes of what Test cricket can look like, and They pick players that exist at the extreme and they force them to do unbelievable things. I think in some ways what they struggled with this one, in this test, with this particular challenge, is that it was actually an extremely doable defence. It almost didn't seem to interest them that much. The idea of just batting out the overs wasn't cool enough. And I don't mean I'm being slightly flippant, obviously, but I think there's something about the mentality about basketball that clarifies itself around a goal which seems just out of reach, that seems just a little bit ridiculous, and actually a block out didn't feel like that. It felt almost a bit too pedestrian, and so that's why you end up with this peculiar vibe where they are hitting sixes, but then they're also not really scoring that quickly. They're batting long, but not that long. It just fell somewhere between two stools, and yeah, it was an uncanny valley, and I didn't enjoy it.
No, but I want to give some credit to, obviously, to Akash Deep, which will not come as any surprise to you or anyone else listening to this, because there were two balls, I think, in that innings that won the game for India. Both bowled to Yorkshireman, one to Joe Root, which was an absolute beauty. I mean, when you watch Joe Root playing that shot, you think, oh, he's played around it. And then when you see the analysis of the ball and you realise the width it was bowled at, that actually, he's faced an awful lot of balls, not just in test matches, in nets, everywhere. Your instinct to a ball delivered from that angle is to look to work the ball into the onside. It's coming into your pads. And it didn't do that. It veered away from his outside edge to hit the top of off stump. Slightly similar, but fundamentally still different from the ball that Tongue bowled to get rid of KL Rahul. Again, delivered slightly wide of the crease. He was beaten on the outside edge, and his middle stump came out, which is a massive rarity, especially for an opening batter. Yeah, you do see it with the tail, but not with an opening batter. So that ball was key because I really could see Joe Root on that pitch just batting had he not been prized out. And then Harry Brook. So, to look at the way Jamie Smith batted and realise how comfortable he was, saw him in the first innings, of course, with Harry Brook. The ball that got rid of Brook basically broke the game because the man who comes in next, Ben Stokes, he looked in better form, but he's not really going to be the man to do that. And you kind of think if Brook hadn't got out, then he and Jamie Smith could easily have batted and batted and batted. So two balls to break the game. And they both of those were a combination of high skill, high pace, and a little bit of deterioration. I'm going to stand by the fact that the pitch did a little bit more. Now, of course,
Yeah.
pitches are supposed to. And it didn't do loads. You're absolutely right. I mean, Jadeja got the ball to rag a little bit, and that did cause a few problems. It meant that down the bottom of the order, there was never any chance that they would get us to keep going. So it was I'm with you on all those points, but I think I've got to give enough credit to the Indian bowlers who just extracted loads more. And I have to ask the question, are they managing their bowling resources so much better than England? England went in with an undercooked Chris Woakes. In the first test, he didn't look on it. He bowled one really good spell in the first innings, like one other quite decent spell in the second innings. The Cars looked exhausted, foot problem. Tongue, they bowled a lot of overs. Stokes seemed to manage himself, whereas India, by leaving out Bumrah and slightly altering their bowling lineup, ended up with two spinners who were able, to a degree, to hold, not be awfully threatening in the first innings, but hold enough time to give Akash Deep and Mohammed Siraj, whose numbers are ridiculously better when he bowls without Bumrah, to bowl really important key spells. One half wonders if Siraj should not play the next test match and Bumrah come in because he gets a lot less effective. I would say that only partially flippantly. So England, on the other hand, now all the talk is, your bowlers are bowled into the ground. Your replacement bowlers have played no cricket. Exciting as it would be to see Archer and possibly Atkinson back, they're in a way worse position than India, who look refreshed, effective, fast, and on it.
I think it's a fair point, and it's probably one we wouldn't have made a week ago. I mean, I stand by the fact that Bumrah should have played in this game. I don't think England make a runnable 300 partnership if Jasprit Bumrah is playing, and I think they wouldn't necessarily have had to have taken the game quite as deep as they did if they'd got Bumrah alongside Akash and Siraj. But that's what they're probably going to have at Lords. It's going to it's going to be a pretty tasty attack. I think the way that this Indian attack blends together is really nice, or when those three guys play together. We did some stuff on Sky showing Since Akash debuted last year, his bowling average with the new ball is the third best in the world after Hazelwood and Rabada. So he averages about 14 in the first 15 overs of the game. So that's when you want him bowling 6 or 7 with the new ball, basically. That works really nicely. Siraj, actually the opposite, really struggles with the new ball, averages over 30. I don't know whether he just struggles to control the movement, whether it's certain kinds of batters, whatever. It just doesn't seem to quite bring out his best, but he's brilliant with the old ball. And so that dovetails really nicely. Bumrah is obviously brilliant whenever. And if you then add onto that the spinners, controlling or attacking towards the end of the game, it's a really nice attack. If they can get all those guys into one team, whether they can make the balance work is another question. But if they can, it's a really, really nice attack. I think with England, what part of the issue with Woakes being undercooked is there's not really an obvious new ball strike option in this glut of bowlers that they've got. They've got a lot of, big strong boys who want to bowl first change and bang it in and bowl that hard length. There's not a lot of guys who want to move the ball up top, swing or seam. I think Atkinson can be that bowler, but I think he's also more comfortable bowling first change. Archer certainly is. Woakes is the guy who is supposed to be the most experienced of the bowlers, obviously is, but also the leader of the attack and taking that new ball. And it made such a difference on that first morning, seeing him bowl so well. And he was really unlucky. He could easily have had 3 foot. And I think the entire complexion of the game would have been very, very different for obvious reasons. And we'll go to Lords, which is obviously his happiest hunting ground. It's Chris Woakes at Lords. No one is better anywhere than him. Essentially, it's his heaven, and so he'll probably have to play. But they really, really need him to deliver, because if he works, then the cabal behind him, whether it's a slightly injured Cast, a knackered Josh Tongue, a fresh but undercooked Atkinson and Archer, they all work better following a successful Chris Woakes. I think that's the key for England. It's not necessarily the identity; it's their experienced, legendary seamer actually standing up as the leader of the attack.
Yeah, I mean, why don't we actually just finish our speculations on Lords actually before we go back into this test? It looks now inevitable that Archer is going to play, and there's been a lot of talk about, well, if he was going to play, why didn't he play a bit for Sussex with the Kookaburra ball? All sorts of good reasons for him to do that, in that the Kookaburra rounds in the County Championship were designed for England's bowlers to get used to it in testing conditions, and instead he decided to bowl some left-arm spin on the outfield, which did seem a little bit peculiar. But, I mean, he did also bowl quick out there, and there is a logic to bringing him into the group. A bit of the vibe stuff, but a bit also of, just so he's got his head around the game and what's going to be happening. I get that. I don't know if Atkinson is going to be ready. No one does. I mean, they will, no, but we won't, because it's a hamstring. It was after the Zimbabwe test. It's not that long ago. Jamie Overton's been dragged around for quite a while, both in the IPL and now by England without playing. And you've got the issue of Sam Cooke, who's still in the squad from Zimbabwe. Is he the cover for Chris Woakes? Because you sort of imagine that England would want Archer from the pavilion end, nip back, and Woakes from the nursery end. I say that there's also a little bit of an issue for India there. I mean, it's not a bad issue. It's a good one to have, which is I think both Bumrah and Akash Deep will prefer the pavilion end because of the slope and the way that they bring it in, which sort of means that Siraj is likely to have to take the new ball. I don't think you can just simply give it to Bumrah and Akash Deep, even though both of them are better with the new ball, because the ends are so very specific and their effectiveness will be that. But England have to make changes. India only really have to make one. And that one is going to be Prasid Krishna, who bowled pretty well. I mean, he had some unfortunate moments when his skipper said, can you bang it in short, to a man who likes to absolutely marmalise the ball into the stands. And then they abandoned that plan for good reasons, and then he bowled pretty well. But he goes out, Bumrah comes in, nothing else changes, does it?
Yeah, I think that's the obvious one. I mean, the ultra attacking move would be to look at the involvement in the last 2 tests of the seam bowling all rounder for India, whether it's Shardul or whether it's Nitish Kumar Reddy. He barely bowled a ball and barely hit a ball. So you could say, well, let's use that bonus position, and they've had minimal involvement, and let's try and get another attacking bowler in. Let's try and get Kuldeep in. They picked Kuldeep in 2018 when it rained for 2 days at Lords, so there's clearly a little bit of inclination, although obviously a very different setup. Personally, I think they'll stick with the same team with that one change that you outlined. I don't think they need to panic, but this is also Gambia's India, and so they will change. They will make things they will make changes that we don't see coming because that's what they do, and we can't. By its very nature, we can't predict it. I think for England, just to jump on the Sam Cook question, because I think it's really interesting. England have spoken in the presser yesterday about how they want pace and bounce at Lords. They want juice in the wicket.
Good
I'm
luck with
thinking,
that.
yeah, I'm thinking that's not really what Lords does, guys. It's flat and then it's flatter and then it gets flatter, which has been generally the order of the day for baseball pitches, and so they shouldn't necessarily be moving away from the template, which has, lest we forget, in the regretful hours following a rare Test defeat for England at home, it works for them. These pitches do tend to work for them, and they shouldn't get too spooked by Shubman Gill batting for a year and a half in one game and playing exceptionally well. There's still a route to victory for England on these flat pitches. I think if they do manage to turn it into a beautiful green seamer of old, then Sam Cook does come into the equation. And I think, especially as a guy who can bowl a lot of overs, who can give them a little bit more security with potentially injury issues for Archer, Atkinson, and obviously Stokes ongoing, I think that could be a really interesting an interesting zig in an attack which is generally zagged towards big, tall, strong, fast bowlers. I don't think they'll do it because I think the way that they're seeing Sam Cook is, yeah, he's there for when Chris Woakes is injured, but it would be an interesting kind of counter to their general approach of we'll just bounce the shit out of you, basically. And we've all seen what Cook can do in county cricket. He didn't do a particularly great job against Zimbabwe, but you're allowed to have a bad Test debut or a middling Test debut and still go on to have a fulfilling career. So I'd like to see him at some point, but I'm not convinced it'll be this week.
Yeah, the World Test Championship final and a whole bunch of county matches tells us that they do leave a bit of grass on at Lords, and as a result, you do get nip and movement on the first day and into the second day before it becomes turgid and almost impossible to take wickets. So even if Cook was effective in the first innings, he could be deeply ineffective in the second innings. It's going to be a conundrum, and with temperatures forecasted to be 31 degrees, it's going to be a brave man who, having put a side into bat at Edgbaston and conceded a gazillion runs, goes, do you know what, we're going to do it all over again just 3 days after you all look knackered. I'm looking forward to that. We shall see.
I would say just one thing on that. Like, we have seen Edgbaston turn on day 5. So they should have slightly seen that coming, that actually it's hot. We saw in 2019 Ashes, day 5, Nathan Lyon runs through England. That wasn't completely unheard of.
No.
It's pretty unheard of for Lords to become a ragger on day 4 and 5. So I think if Stokes has the clarity and conviction that we think he does, he should stick with the plan. It's fine. Bowl first. Do what you want to do. Do what you generally do. But yeah, it will be a brave man who does it. But I think Ben Stokes is a brave man.
Before we go into the Hall of Fame and all that, I just want to rattle through a few magnificent numbers from this Test match. 698 runs have been scored by keepers, in large part because, in a crowded field for India, who've got Shubman Gill at the top of the tree, and Yashasvi Jaiswal very much in supreme form against England every time he plays them. They've had double centurion Rishabh Pant scoring mountains of runs, and England's probably most secure batter, you'd have to say, and certainly most destructive, has been Jamie Smith. So you've got this odd anomaly, 698 runs. It's already a record for the most number of runs by keepers in a series in England, with 3 matches to go. It's third in the all-time list, so almost certainly going to break that one. That's a beauty. I've already mentioned second most number of runs conceded by England. Shoaib Bashir has conceded over 500 runs in just the 2 Test matches. He's only got a little bit under 500 to go to beat the all-time record of Clary Grimmett, who conceded just over 1,000 runs in the run-drenched 1928-29 series when Wally Hammond ran amok. And my last little number, because I just love it, is that both Test matches, Headingley and Edgbaston, lasted for exactly 391.4 overs. Spooky.
You said that before we started recording, and it sent me into cataclysms of giggles. It's a mad old stat, that, but also just sat back and thought, yeah, they both finished late on day 5. Yeah, this is all perfectly reasonable. But yeah, that's a lovely coincidence. And the keeper one, I think, is actually really interesting as well, because it does speak to India have taken the plunge on sticking their wicketkeeper at 5 and saying, mate, keep wicket, but you're better than the others, so bat up the order. I wonder how long it'll take before England get to a similar conclusion.
Okay, I know hot takes can be very irritating, but how about Jamie Smith bats at 3 and Ollie Pope takes the gloves and bats at 6 with Stokes at 7?
This was those playing final word bingo when I'm on. Tim Wigmore wrote a piece saying exactly that yesterday. A job swap for Pope and Smith. I think basically everyone agrees that Ollie Pope is better down the order, but that's true of almost every player. I think it's a slightly moot point. I think the question is how good could Jamie Smith be given a platform and given time, particularly behind an opening partnership, which obviously is at times erratic, but generally churns out runs. He's not going to be coming in with terrible platforms. The majority of the time, he's clearly an outstanding player. And if he had the opportunity to get into the game, he's got brilliant technique. His record against balls above the stumps, so balls passing above the stumps, he averages 108 in Test cricket. So the question of can he play, pace and bounce with one eye on the Ashes? Sorry to distract from the ongoing series. It's a moot question. He's clearly brilliant off the back foot. So if we're asking who's going to front up and face Hazelwood and Cummins on day one at the Perth Stadium, I think he's as well placed as any. I'm not convinced entirely just yet because I don't want to overburden a young man who's got a lot on his plate. But it's a question which I don't think is going to go away.
Just to put in context how extraordinarily brilliant he is, keeping wicket is not his first job by any means. He barely does it for Surrey because Ben Foakes does it. He scored tantalisingly and annoyingly. If that last ball had gone for 6, he would have got over the milestone. 997 runs in his first 12 Test matches, which is more than any other keeper to have played their first 12 matches as a keeper has ever scored. So, look, he's generational, he's extraordinary, he's remarkable. He's currently the only, apart from maybe Harry Brook, shining light in an England team that a week ago were world beaters. So how quickly times can change. Recency bias, that's what Shubman Gill will do to you. Oh, and I should point out that he is on course to beat Donald Bradman's record of 974, but I think I did that on a final word daily. So there you go. You get the same stat for free. Right, this show is brought to you by New Brew. It's a supplement to support brain health and performance, and it contains a range of ingredients called nootropics. Taking lots of pills is no fun. So this is a single drink that does the job. There are many of these single drinks, I should point out. Your choice is legion. There are other formulations for different needs, like relaxation or competition, and there's no plastic packaging. You mix it in a glass, shaken, not stirred, just like Bond. Just think James Bond, shaken, not stirred. Mix it in a glass, and it's all made from biodegradable materials. Its primary purpose is to increase sharpness, concentration, and memory, and I think I'm actually justification of that because I've rattled off a whole bunch of stats without even looking at anything written down, which for a 56-year-old man who's actually not been very kind to his body for about 42 of those years, pretty remarkable. It's formulated in collaboration with scientists and nutritionists, and the one I want to focus on today very briefly is the red one. If you're someone a little bit like me who catches every cold going around, I often get them right at the end of the season, frequently the last game of the season. The throat goes down and you go, oh no, I was going to have 2 weeks off and now I feel terrible. Well, New Brew Shield is like your daily immune armour. Think of it like a backup for your body's natural defences. If you're a final word listener, which you surely are because you're listening to this, go to newbrew.com/final word. That's NOOBRU.com/final word to get 15% off. The discount will be applied automatically at the checkout. Right, it's time for us to take a break. On the flip side, it's going to be the Hall of Fame for which Ben has not been prepared. Welcome back. It's the Hall of Fame on the final word. And, well, I don't really know where to go with the Hall of Fame, but I guess, how about what was the most Hall of Famey thing that happened in that Test match? We've had a lot of them. There have been some crazy, crazy things that have occurred in that Test match. We've had all the numbers. We've had Shubman Gill do this, that, and the other. Do you know what I'm going to go for? I want to go for something that I don't think has been pointed out enough, which is India's brilliance at over management, by which I mean Ben Stokes' dismissal yesterday. India did this a couple of times in the Test match. They got an over through from Jadeja that allowed them to bowl one extra over before a break with like 5 seconds to go. I was watching, I was on commentary, I was ticking it down. I was going, oh no, they're in place with 5 seconds to go, which allowed Washington Sundar to bowl the over that got rid of Ben Stokes on the stroke of lunch, which, had he not done so, England were actually putting up a bit of resistance there with their skipper at the crease. In the end, because he was out before lunch, hammer blow, in comes Chris Woakes. And I just love the fact that they are all over it, and also how angry they get when England's batters, well, when Ben Duckett especially, because he's the best at this, is able just to faff about and stop them from getting that other over in.
He's got such a remarkable skill at getting under players' skins, Duckett. Because he's a lovely guy, but just knows how to
But he's very little. He's
wheedle
very
and
little, very
nerdle.
little, so he can get
Sneaks
in
in.
between the little cracks and get in between the folds.
It's just it's an impressive skill. I remember for years in T20 cricket, but I mean he's graduated onto the international stuff that you guys all watch now. But Phil Salt was like the iconic agitator in T20 cricket. It seemed like every single player in the Big Bash hated Phil Salt, who again is a lovely man. So it's quite peculiar that you end up in that situation. I would say my Hall of Fameiest moment. I'm a man of discourse. I'm a man of the internet. I like hot takes and overreactions, and so I like moments that stimulate people to lose their heads. And I would say the shot that Zach Crawley played on the night of day 4, trying to hit a wide half volley for 4, like his life depended on it when he was chasing 600 in 100 overs. I think that was the most discoursiest thing that has ever happened, because we're never going to learn anything about Crawley. He's going to play every test until the end of the Ashes. He's probably going to play every test until Stokes and McCullum resign / are anointed as the leaders of the cabinet. He is ours for as long as we're going to get him, and we have to accept him as he is. But playing that shot did feel a little bit like an AI had recreated Zach Crawley in the abstract of like, yeah, that's probably what he'd do. Yeah, but there's game situations, Zach. Maybe you should be slightly more circumspect. No, I'm afraid I can't do that for you guys. I'm going to try and hit a 4, saving the game in the only time of the entire test where it looks like maybe you can get out the new ball, and I'm going to do it against a very, very good bowler. It was liquid Crawley.
I think that is very, very worthy. And I'm going to supply you with one more before we leave, because it popped into my head again and I remember laughing so much as it happened. Umpire Saikat, otherwise known as Shafadullah, he had a fantastic game. He got all of his umpires' calls, well, right or wrong, depending on how you look at it, but they were umpires' calls, so perfectly fair. It's in the definition. It's the umpire's call, and he called it. He got the ones that were out, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, he made an absolutely terrible decision. It was off Jamie Smith, who's a very tall man, about 6'3", and he was pulling a ball that hit him high on his back thigh pad, gave it out. Jamie Smith was very quick to refer it. The ball was shown to be missing the stumps by a really enormous amount. It was super missing. It was nowhere near umpire's call. Umpire's call, you couldn't hear the umpire's call from the distance. If the umpire had been calling from the top of middle stump going, I think that's out, the ball wouldn't have been able to hear it. It was too far away. That was how far away it was. And then, bless him, he got the ball in his hand, of course, because that's what happens at the end of a wicket. When a wicket's been given, he's passed the ball. Then he realises he's got to hand it back. So he tosses it gently underarm to Mohammed Siraj, who only sees it at the very last minute, flinchingly goes, "Bleh!" and knocks it onto his own head. It was a moment of high farce and brilliant comedy where umpire Saikat, who had been superb throughout, had one moment of utter ineptitude. And let that be a lesson, because that is the human condition, my friend. In my case, slightly more moments of ineptitude, I have to say. But, it happens to the best of us. That is literally what the phrase was intended for. Right.
I would say that just my one addition to that, to your beautiful entry to the final word is I would like to propose an anti Hall of Fame segment, which is things you hate about cricket. And one thing that I hate about cricket is the concept of not out umpires or out umpires. The idea that they are at any point going, well, it might be out, but I'm going to give it not out, or vice versa. The idea that you can get a reputation for just being wrong at your job, it makes my blood boil. I'm a DRS man through and through. I have been brought up in the age of the DRS and the umpire's call. So the discretionary activities of umpires, without the technology at their fingertips, boils my blood. But luckily, yeah, we're in a modern age. AI will replace umpires soon. We're all safe. Everything's going to be fine. But that little figment of the past still winds me up.
Testify, Jonesy. Right. It's time. It's time for us to say goodbye. We'll be back on Wednesday with a preview, as I say, only 2 days away for the Lord's Test. I don't know who'll be doing it. You'll find out in good time. But from Ben Jones and from myself, it's goodbye. But just a reminder before I go to newbrew.com/final word. That's NOOBRU to get your 15% off. The discount will be applied automatically at checkout. But for now, and for a very short amount of time, 48 hours, from me, Daniel Norcross, it is goodbye. And from Ben Jones, it's
Goodbye.
there we go. Bye.